Bill Castle bought the novel, and he wanted to direct it. And I read it, and I said, I'll buy it today, but you can't direct it. If I can't direct it, I'm not going to do it. He says, okay, you have a 3-year exclusive contract here, you'll hold it and never get the picture made.
Bill Castle was a wonderful man. His problem was he made the cheapest horror movies you could make, and he was a great flacker. I mean, the publicity things that he did, the way he got people interested with vibrating seats and feelies and, you know, it was all this cheap stuff that he did, but he was great. He was charming, funny, and he made a lot of money doing it.
He produced the picture, and then we went out to look for a director, but I always wanted to do something with Roman. I saw Cul-de-sac, and he had just come in, he had done The Vampire Killers, which was not a successful film, but there were things in it that were extraordinary. And Roman thought he wasn't interested in doing it. He was looking to do a ski picture.
Bob Evans knew that I was a ski fanatic, and I would be attracted by a ski project. And he also said, and I have these galleys here. It was a bunch of yellow book galleys. He says, I want you to read this also.
The skiing picture we were going to do at one point was Downhill Racer.
He wanted to do a ski picture, so I have this, but I have this too.
Can you read the galleys first? I say, well, I thought you wanted me to do the ski film. And he says, yes, but this is something very important, and you may like it. I said, okay. I say, fine, I'll go. And I went to the hotel and started reading the thing. It felt like soap opera, the first few pages. And I thought, is it not a mistake? I continued. And by 4 o'clock in the morning, I was still reading with my eyes burning. And in the morning, I came to the studio. I said, yes, that's a good thing. And he said, well, let's do it. And that's how Rosemary's Baby began.
You know what he said? I thought it was a soap opera. That was the best clue he had. And we used it. Rosemary Baby opens like a Doris Day movie. That's the whole point.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Fireplace works, of course. Right.
Oh, it's a wonderful apartment. I love it.
See what she's trying to do? She's trying to get you to lower the rents.
Yes, well, we'd raise it if we were allowed.
One of my first requests when I was asked to come to Hollywood to do this film, before any cast, before anything, was Dick Silbert.
We talked about someday doing a movie together. That's how I got to do Rosemary's Baby.
Dick Silbert's a brilliant, brilliant production designer.
I told Bob Evans, can we use Dick Silbert? And I gave him the galleys of the book to read immediately before I even adapted the book. And Dick agreed, and he told me, there is a building you must see, it's the Dakota. And so when we went to New York, there was the first place he showed me. He also showed other buildings.
Roman didn't know New York. I spent 35 years in New York. There's not a place in that book that I didn't know what it should be like.
Well, the Dakota even had more of a history to it than it has today. It was more eerie then.
I don't recall whether Ira Levin had the Dakota in mind when he was writing the novel, but as far as we were concerned, that was our immediate decision.
I think it's one of the main characters in the picture.
Are you aware that the Bramford had rather an unpleasant reputation around the turn of the century? It's where the Trench sisters conducted their little dietary experiments. Adrian Mercato lived there, too. The Trench sisters were two proper Victorian ladies. They cooked and ate several young children, including a niece.
Oh, lovely.
Adrian Mercato practiced witchcraft.
Rosemary's Baby was the first time that I used the material from another source, as they say in the Academy jargon.
I spent 30 days at the beach house with Roman working on that script after his first draft. First he did his draft.
His work on the script with Gerard Brock was extraordinary. He's a very good writer.
My God.
It's Vidal Sassoon. It's very in.
What's wrong with you?
Do I look that bad?
Terrible. You're not on one of those Zen diets, are you?
No.
Then what is it? Have you seen a doctor?
Hatch, I might as well tell you, I'm pregnant.
I imagined Rosemary differently at the beginning. I imagine her more like she's in the book, healthy, milk-fed, American, all-American girl. Mia had this very delicate quality, and that's not how I thought of Rosemary when I was adapting the book.
He wanted Tuesday Weld, and I wanted Mia Farrow.
She was then popular in the television show.
Mia Farrow at that time was on Peyton Place.
Bob thought that she would be a good Rosemary. It was important for him to have some kind of a name, and Mia meant something to the American audience through the television. She was absolutely unknown in the rest of the world, particularly in Europe. Nobody knew who Mia Farrow was. But meeting Mia, I quickly realized that she would be very good for that part.
I just saw Mia as that quality, that eerie quality about her. I didn't know her, I just had seen her, you know, and I think she was marvelous in it.
Mia had something that, as we know in hindsight, was special. Just that little extra, in which I think is this tremendous vulnerability.
I'm going to Dr. Hill Monday morning. Dr. Saperstein is either lying or he's, I don't know, out of his mind. Pain like this is a warning something's wrong.
I said, we're going to have trouble with her. I know we are, Bob. If we go, there'll be some problems. He was right, there was problems. But not with her. It was her marriage with Frank, etc.
But Frank Sinatra, you got married to and you were the wife.
She wanted to leave, to be with Frank. She was madly in love with Frank. And I took her in and showed her an hour of cut footage. I said, you're going to win the Academy Award on this. This is better than Audrey Hepburn and Wait Until Dark. This is extraordinary. Suddenly, she didn't want to get on a plane to leave.
Rosemary, you got the best doctor in New York. You know who Dr. Hill is? He's a Charlie Nobody. That's who he is.
Cassavetes was my idea. I was looking originally also for more of an old American boy.
Our original choice was Robert Redford.
Redford would have been perfect. I mean, what you wanted was a matinee idol.
I remember that even Jack Nicholson was somehow considered. I didn't know him yet in those times. I think we just briefly met. So I knew John, and I thought he was a terrific actor.
John did a wonderful job. I had done a picture with John just before, a few years before, called Edge of the City, Marty Ritt's first picture. So we knew each other very well.
There is nothing more subjective that causes more arguments, healthy ones, than casting. It's they say beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, so is casting.
Hello, how are you?
Fine. May I come in a minute?
Yes, of course, please do.
I just come over to thank you for saying those nice things to us the other night.
Oh, no, please.
Poor
you don't have
Terry. We thought maybe we failed her some way. Though her note made it crystal clear we had, and she'll never know how helpful it was in such a shock moment. So I do thank you. Roman does, too. Roman's my hubby.
I just know that Ruth, whatever she does, if you saw Harold and Maude, how do you tell a story about an 18-year-old boy falling in love with an 80-year-old woman and get away with it? You can with Ruth Gordon.
I knew Ruth because Garson Kanin, her husband, was a friend of mine, and I had done a pilot film for him in New York.
Casting of Ruth Gordon in the picture was a part of the whole enterprise. I thought of all those secondary roles in the book in certain way, and I thought that I would like to use all the Hollywood actors for this part. In order to explain what I really wanted to the casting director of the studio at that time, I drew all the characters. And I said that the physical aspect of each of those characters was more important to me than some kind of acting abilities.
His vision of these characters was what started that, what he wanted. And you'd have to be Roman to have made that choice.
He's very good with actors because he's an actor himself. He's a good actor. Better director, but he's a good actor.
All the directors that I've really liked, I like them all, but I'm ones that I've spent most of my time with, were actors.
Lara Louise is this guy's wife, Rosemary.
Hello, Rosemary. Welcome to the Bram.
Lara Louise just met Guy. She wanted to meet you, too. Could we come in?
Of course, please do.
There now. Go ahead.
Patsy Kelly was also one of those actors who fit the description, or rather the drawings that I did for them. And she was terrific, actually. She was fun to work with, too.
It's interesting to put an actor in a part that you don't expect him to do. But it's more fun to use Patsy Kelly in a part like that than to have her play a comic book. You've seen it before.
I was maybe 34, which seems young today, but at that time I felt like a total adult, and I was furthermore completely uninhibited and had no problems in directing old Hollywood veterans. I just felt very at ease with them, and it was a tremendously pleasurable experience to work with this bunch. They were terrific.
Maybe all this is coincidence, but one thing is for sure. They have a coven and they want my baby.
Certainly seems that way.
I was afraid you wouldn't believe me.
I don't believe in witchcraft, but there are plenty of maniacs and crazy people in this city.
Chuck Grodin was tested for The Graduate with Dustin. And there I see this performance of this guy who's terrific. And that's when I said to Roman, you got to meet this guy.
I remember Dick Silbert told me about this actor. He says, that's a great New York guy, you should try him. I don't remember whether we made a test.
It wasn't a very large part, but he was very good in it. And from then on, he never stopped working.
Is this Donald Baumgart?
That's right.
This is Rosemary Woodhouse. Guy Woodhouse's wife?
Oh, yeah.
I want to
My
know...
God, you must be a happy little lady these
I
days,
just-
huh? Living in the brown rows of uniform.
I wanted to know how you are, if there's been any improvement.
Well, bless your heart.
Tony Curtis, who was a friend, also a friend of Mia's, came on the set once. Mia hasn't seen him yet. When I had the idea of using him to play the voice on the telephone, and I asked Tony to do that as a joke, and he went on the other end of the wire and talked to her. And Mia said, I know this voice, but she didn't know who it was. I said, I think now that beside the joke, it was also a good thing for her acting, because it did something to her, the fact that the voice was familiar, and yet she could not guess who was on the other end of the wire.
I'm sorry I didn't come along that day he came to visit you.
Visit? No. Oh, you mean the day we met for drinks? Huh?
Yes, that's what I meant.
Right.
My favorite scene is at Doctor's Hill, when Dr. Saperstein and Guy come to get her, and when Saperstein slips the pills into his pocket.
Come with us quietly, Rosemary. Don't argue or make a scene. Because if you say anything more about witches or witchcraft, we're going to be forced to take you to a mental hospital.
Roman is very, very, very clever, technically. He knows more about lenses than cameramen do.
My favorite shot in the movie, for some reason, is when Rosemary is being put into the car and the driver turns and nods to her, and we see that he's one of the secondary witches of whom we could catch a glimpse during the New Year's party.
Rosemary, I want you to be Dr. Shand, who used to be a famous dentist. He made the chain for your charm.
Oh, how do you do?
I had to pick a favorite scene. I say it's the very last scene, because you see nothing and it's scary as hell.
Well, I wanted the film to be ambiguous, particularly the ending. I wanted to be ambiguous.
Yes, it was ambiguous, but it's scary too.
What have you done to its eyes?
He has his father's eyes.
What are you talking about? Guy's eyes are normal.
But what really mattered to me is that the audience should not be sure whether she is crazy and imagining all those things that are happening to her as a plot, or that the plot really exists. That means that the viewer could either think that these are real witches, that the child was really begot by a devil, or rather that Rosemary has some kind of postpartum madness and believes it all to be true.
That's why it's the great horror film without any horror in it. and there ain't going to be no baby.
In every film, the ending is always the most difficult thing to get.
Rocky.
He's trying to get me to be his mother.
Aren't you his mother?
I remember once meeting Otto Preminger on the audience. He said, "Roman, why do you look so gloom?" I said, behind what? I said, behind schedule. He says, so what? He says, what about the dailies? I say, they love the dailies. So that's your answer. And indeed, I thought of it. The studio really was very excited about the rushes.
Those were great years in Hollywood. They were part of the very beginning of the golden age, second golden age of movies.
Rosemary's Baby stands alone as being the first of his genre. I knew it was going to be a big hit because it shook people. Now mind you, this is a picture, call it a horror picture, call it not a horror picture, call it a scare picture, but there are no special effects, there's no screaming thing that's happening, or walls tumbling down, or crocodiles coming out of the walls, or anything like that. It's all in the way he shot it, and it works on every level. It scares the hell out of you.